Hello, everyone. I am back with System Synthesis, Chapter 25, titled It's Hard to Admit. What he was doing was probably wrong, toxic even. He didn't quite know what else to do. He had tried. He swore he tried a nicer path, but none of them worked. It just wasn't enough. The pain was never quite gone. The fear lingered over his body, crawling over his skin like a thousand invisible insects never left. The lump in his throat, the tears in his eyes never dried. It was just there, all the time, preying on his nerves, making him jump, double check, glance over his shoulder. Every time he closed his eyes, he would taste copper on his tongue and ash choking his lungs. He would feel the throb of phantom wounds on his legs, on his arm. Red dripped off his fingertip, hands against a cold, unbreathing, unmoving body. There was just so much, and he was just so tired. He barely did anything, and yet the exhaustion seeped bone deep in his body. Molten lead filled his veins, muscles melting off. His lungs ached and limbs cried from pain. But he needed to push himself. Just another kilometer. Another set, just enough to finish his daily task, something he could finish with ease before. He knew he shouldn't push himself so far when he was barely able to hold himself together, but the sweet, sweet pain of exhaustion at the end of the day would knock him out the moment his body hit the bed. He couldn't help but push himself until he was too exhausted to even dream. The fight with Katsuki had left him unnerved. He knew Katsuki didn't mean what he said. His best friend for nearly a decade had always been rough with his words, but he had long stopped meaning the words he threw his way, and yet the words stung, cut into him like a searing hot knife, cut off his tendons, leaving him useless, like he had said. He tried closing his eyes, tried to rest. He was so exhausted, and he needed to close his eyes just for a moment. Even an hour would be more than enough, but he just couldn't. His body shivered and trembled as he lay on his bed, but sleep didn't come. He flinched when there was a knock on his door, but before he could say anything, the door creaked open. Ichigo struck out his dad from the list of all the people who would come to his room. Shota always waited until Ichigo said come in before he opened the door. He never opened the door without permission, and if some situation needed immediate action, like if Ichigo was sick, he'd ask for the door to be kept open instead. For reasons Ichigo didn't know, and none he could think of would sounded okay, Darby and Hawks never approached him when he was in his room, like they were forbidden to do so. No matter how many times Ichigo assured them that they could knock on his door if they needed him, they refused. It was definite that the habit came from years of conditioning. Ichigo didn't think he would want to know more about it. Well, not unless killing the current number 2 hero was suddenly legal. Ichigo wouldn't ask why it was legal, as long as it was. Ichigo pushed himself off his bed, curling his hand into a fist to keep his subdued trembling a little as his mother walked into the room. Ichigo? She called softly, frowning slightly at the darkness of the room. Ichigo understood the confusion. It was late afternoon with the sun high up in the sky. It was ridiculously bright outside, without any clouds in the sky. Ichigo despised it as of now. Is everything okay? Ichigo dug his nails into the mattress of his bed. Maybe later, when his mind was clearer, when his heart didn't seem like it was trying to escape its way out of his body, when he didn't feel like peeling off his skin away just so he could stop the uneasiness crawling over. He would think now, and silly it was, that he needed to prepare himself just to say a one-syllable word. Yeah, and maybe then, when he would find his situation funny. He would be proud of how well he was able to master the storm inside of him. His voice didn't seem to give away anything. Are you sure, baby? It's not like you would be in the dark when it's afternoon, she said softly. It wasn't. Itsuki, despite his jittery personality, loved being active all the time. So instead, he chose to be evasive. I just have a slight headache, Mom, and the light is making my eyes hurt. It wasn't a lie, because lies tasted bitter on his tongue, but it wasn't the complete truth either. Oh, baby, she said woefully, walking into the room. Itsuki forced himself not to wince at that. He knew she was just worried about him. She didn't mean to hurt him. She wouldn't know that Itsuki did not need any coddling right now. That the way most people seem to tread around him carefully, walking on eggshells, was only making things so much worse for him. Like he was a scared animal. It made him just as weak as he thought he was. Did you drink some water? Would you like me to get you something to eat? She asked kindly. Ichigo shook his head, shifting his hand out of her sight just in case. No, Mum, I'm fine. He smiled a little, as much as he could push himself to do. I just need a little nap. Ichigo closed his eyes, savoring his mother's gentle touch as he ran her fingers through his hair. Are you sure? Ichigo looked up at her, still smiling. Yep. His mother didn't look convinced. A frown still furrowed her brows, but she decided not to push any further, something he was grateful for. Okay, Suku, but if you need something, let me know. I will. Ichigo said, feeling his mask slowly slip off the edges. He bit his tongue, canines digging into the flesh of it as he waited for his mother to leave the room. And once she was gone, he found himself staring into space. He knew his mother was just worried for him. He didn't want to feel the prickles of irritation in his throat. The prickles of irritation in his throat. He knew she was trying to help him, but he didn't want to be treated so gently, so carefully, like he was a glass figure, bound to break. The caution, the care was only making him feel more nervous, like things could flip upside down at any moment, like another danger, one he couldn't protect the others from, was right around the corner. It was suffocating. Dobby and Hawks understood. They didn't pretend like nothing was wrong, but they also didn't treat him so gently. It was grounding to know things were once again okay. He knew he should probably take more time to process the pain, the fear, but the thought of the task was just so daunting. The vestiges had been asking him to seek help, if not from others, from Shota, as his dad, or as a pro hero. Someone knew he would understand the sheer terror of losing a family member. Someone who had looked death right in the eyes and said, "Fuck you, I'm protecting my student." Itsugu blinked. Coming back to the present, he let out a breath and glanced at the time. Over 30 minutes had passed away without him realizing it. He realized he was a little hungry, but at the same time, the thought of food made bile rise up his throat. He groaned, falling back on his bed and rubbed his eyes. Ugh, when will this weekend be over? At school, even if his classmates had been acting a little cautious after his reaction to All Might had somehow spread around, it was bearable somewhat, and if it proved to be too much, he could hide in one of the empty lounge rooms, crawl into his dad's sleeping bag and stay there, and during classes, he didn't have to worry about the others. It seemed like the mental pressure that had been building up since morning was finally enough to push him over the edge of consciousness. Before he knew it, Itsuku felt his eyelids droop and the warm blanket of sleep take over. Sleep helped. At least his nerves weren't tingling all the time. And when his dad came back in the evening, he dragged him to their gym, the one they used for training before UA. Itsuku knew spending time with Shota was a risk. It was a calculated risk he took knowingly. The man seemed to see through everything. Itsuku could never seem to hide anything from him for long. Not like he made an effort all the time, anyway. It wasn't one of the ways he was planning to use the skills of system synthesis, but he had recently spotted a pattern about his dad. The longer Eraserhead knew someone, the harder it is going to be for the person to hide anything from him. The man learned everything about you over time, slowly, one piece of information after the other, tucked away his mind. Itsuki knew that his dad would see the signs, and maybe he wanted him to. He didn't know yet. All he knew for the moment was that he needed a distraction, and sparring with his dad did just that. He was too busy looking for openings, dodging, trying to find a pattern, something to use against the underground hero, to think about things that hurt and scared him. It wasn't usual to seek comfort from Mondays, Isuku knew. Dabi and Hawks had been looking at him weirdly, seeing him bounce around the house. Even his dad was giving him a stink eye when he trudged into the kitchen to make himself a pot of coffee. Ichigo had only snickered in response and continued eating his breakfast. Dabi, his dad called, voice still gravelly and deep from being unused for hours. Dabi flinched slightly, looking up like a kid who was caught doing something wrong, and mumbled, I'll never get used to the morning voice. Shota blinked, too groggy to process anything apart from the important stuff he seemed to always have on his mind. What? Dabi waved his hand. Nothing. Anyway, what were you about to say? Shota frowned slightly, not liking the fact that he was missing something, but quickly decided he still wasn't awake for anything else and said, Sukachi asked you to go meet him around 11. He'll give you the membership card for the RO. What's RO? Izuku queried, poking into the yolk of his coat. Rehabilitation Organization, Shota answered. Even if Dabi hasn't done anything that labels him as a villain, he still has committed petty theft while he was still on the run. Izuku frowned and pouted. He knew there was no way Dabi managed to survive on the street without having to steal food or money at some point. His charges have been dropped, Shota continued, after taking a long sip of his coffee. But if he wants to get a job sometime in his life, he would need to get an official certificate from a rehab org. Itsuka looked at Dabi worried, seeing that the older male patted his hair and said, Don't worry, bud, it's fine. Plus, I can't freeload here forever. I don't want to either. Itsuku didn't like the word freeload. Dabi wasn't freeloading. He was family. Families don't freeload, but he understood not being able to do anything. He has already been living in the house for months without anything to do. It was bound to get to him eventually. What are you planning? He asked. Well, since the case with my dear old daddy is still going to take some time, Dabi said with nonchalance, but it was easy to see through. But no one pointed out anything. Being the number 2 hero gave him immunity like that. But it's still possible, and I will be able to live as a free man someday. So in the meantime, I've decided to start training to become a hero. Itsuku's eyes widened as he dropped his cutlery noisily on the plate, earning a whine of indignation from his dad. You're going to be a hero? That's amazing. What kind? What do you want for your hero name? Can I design the costume? Please, please. I'll do good. I promise. Or maybe I can make analysis for you. I'm good at that. Ask that. Or, Itsuku paused when he heard a soft laugh. He realized Dabi looking at him with a fond and amused expression in his eyes, making the ice blue irises look soft like snowflakes in the sky. He turned his head around and found his dad, head on the counter, nestled between his arms, laughing softly. Itsuku felt his cheeks burn, realizing he might have blabbered too much. What? He pouted, slumping back onto the bar stool. He hadn't realized when he had gotten out of it. He was just so excited at the prospect of Dabi becoming a hero. Shota stopped laughing. Sitting up, he took a long breath. His cheeks were faintly dusted pink, dark eyes warm and glittering like the night sky. He got up from where he sat, heading towards stairs, and ruffled his hair on the way. You know, you look like a puppy or a kitten when you get all excited, Dabi said with a teasing hint in his voice. It's adorable. And to answer your question, I'm training to become a rescue hero. Always wanted to be one. That the job of helping people from danger was much cooler than fighting the bad guys. But dear old daddy said, your powers will make you the #1 hero, so I gave up on that eventually. He paused, taking a bite from his toast. But, well, Hoya Todoroki died 9 years ago. And Dobby doesn't care about what Endeavor has to say. That's so awesome. Isugu thought Dobby was so strong. Maybe not in the controversial way of physical strength. Dobby had been fighting against his demons for so long. The fight wasn't over yet, but he was close and winning. The fight against someone that had terrified him for years to do what he wanted despite being abused for it, to be able to break himself free, needed so much strength. To ask for help needed so much courage. Isugu would know he was failing at it currently. Can I design your hero costume though? Isugu pleaded. I'll make you cool, I promise. He paused and then wondered, can we work together? He paused, another idea popping in his mind, which made him gasp out loud with wonder and awe. He had no idea what expression he had, but it made Dobby chuckle. Slow down, buddy. I'm just starting, he said, reaching out to ruffle his hair. No one can say for sure that I can become a hero, Itsuki responded. Please, you're going to be amazing. I know it. Trust me. My instincts are on point. Right. His dad joined in on the conversation. And are your instincts telling you that if you don't finish eating soon, you're going to be late? Itsuki whipped his head around to check the time on the wall clock and promptly cursed, earning a disapproving look from his mother, who had just walked into the kitchen after getting out of the shower. Oh wait, Isugu slowed down after he realized something. I'm not going with Katsuki. Dad, can I come with you for today? Both his dad and mom stilled, eyeing him with a questioning look. Shota glanced at Inko. He just said Katsuki, didn't he? Inko glanced back. He did. Shota raised his eyebrow, pressing his lips together as both Inko and he came to the same conclusion. Isugu and Katsuki had a fight, a big one, and Isugu was pissed at his best friend. Inko nudged him, and Shota realized he was still supposed to reply to his kid. Sure, but you still need to hurry up though. I'm leaving in 15 minutes. Yep, I'm almost done with everything, Isugu replied, shoveling the last bit of his eggs into his mouth before hopping off his seat and putting his plate in the sink. He rushed into his room to pick up his bag, tie, and ID card before rushing back down. He was in the middle of tying his tie when his dad spoke up. Wait, hold on, stop. He pried Isugu's hand away from his tie. I've been meaning to ask, kid, from where did you learn to tie your tie like that? What are you even trying to do? Strangle yourself with it? Isugu pouted when he heard Dobby snort from the dining table. He knew he wasn't good at tying his tie, but he wasn't that bad, was he? Internet videos? He said petulantly, letting his dad pull off the tie from around his neck and redo it. Shota sighed, shaking his head, looping the tie around his neck to tie a simple single knot. I've failed. Itsugu scrunched his nose at his dad's dramatic, a rare but hilarious sight. Here, he said, handing over the tied tie back to Itsugu. He watched as the teen pulled it down his head and tightened it snugly around his neck. Please remind me to teach you later on. Isugu stared flatly at the pained expression on his dad's face. Amusement glimmered in his eyes. Sure, he chirped with a fake smile. His dad's lips stretched into a smirk as he nodded and walked away to go put his shoes on. Isugu gave him a stink eye while he went to drink a glass of water before heading out with his dad. Walking into the class by himself was unusual. He came a little later than usual because he had unknowingly followed after his dad all the way to the teacher's room, and on his way back, he had wandered around for a little while before heading to his classroom. There was still 15 minutes before their class started, and 10 minutes before his dad entered the classroom. And yet Katsuki Bakugo was nowhere in sight. Usually the blonde came a while 20 minutes before class started, and yet today the blonde was nowhere in sight. Midoriya! Uraka beamed, seeing him. Isugu suppressed the urge to flinch at her sudden voice and smiled back. He greeted her, Ida, Zero, and Suyu one by one. Itsukuta sat down at his seat, chatting lightly with Shinso when the door slid open with a slam, loud enough to make Itsuku jump in his seat, whip his head around, heart racing in his chest. Bakugo Katsuki stomped his way into the class, a scowl edged on his face, looking like he was deep in his throat. Then his eyes flickered up and he noticed Itsuku. Immediately his expression shifted, scowl washing away to something softer, more regretful. His eyes glanced back to the door, and then on the way, Itsugu was sitting on the edge of his chair and bit his lip. Itsugu's expression shifted to an apathetic one. He knew Katsuki didn't mean it when he called him useless, but the words hurt anyway, and he wasn't going to forgive his friend so easily. So he looked away from him, turning his attention back to Shinso. Itsuku, Katsuki called, and the entire class fell quiet, probably expecting a drama. Itsuku stopped in between of his conversation with Shinso. He turned his head around to look at Katsuki, raising his eyebrow at him, and did nothing else to acknowledge his presence. Katsuki frowned when he saw the cold eyes Itsugu was looking at him with, but decided he definitely deserved it after what happened on Saturday. Itsugu saw Katsuki suck in a deep breath. The class leaned away from him, probably expecting him to yell like the other times. Itsugu understood the caution. The scowl from before once again had crawled up on his friend's face, looking even more menacing. But to everyone's surprise, to everyone's but Itsugu's surprise, Katsuki didn't yell, but instead he pulled his bag to the front and fished out something. Itsugu heard someone gasp, most likely Asuro, when Katsuki pulled out a box wrapped neatly in a dark mauve wrapping paper with a lilac bow on top. Itsugu had planned to stay mad at his friend for the day, but the moment he noticed the gift, he couldn't help his anger from melting away. He bit the inside of his cheek when he realized what his friend was doing. Katsuki Bakugo seemed to never be able to utter the word sorry. So instead, he took a trick from Mashiro's book and gave apology gifts instead. It was something he had learned when he was a kid, around 7 years of age. He didn't remember what he had done, but Itsuku had been truly mad at him for the very first time, and he had no idea how to apologize. So he had asked his dad what he did when his mom was mad at him. Get her favorite flowers or sweets, he said with a soft smile. Always worked. So that's what Katsuki did. Whenever he had to apologize, he couldn't utter out the word sorry, but did the next best thing he could do. He had gotten Asuku sunflowers when they were kids, because he had no idea what Asuku's favorite flowers were. And Uncle Masaru had said sunflowers were happy flowers. Asuku watched with a neutral, cold expression as Katsuki trudged over to him, scowl still on face, and shoved the prettily wrapped box in his direction. Here, Isuku stared at his friend, rejoicing in the way his friend looked uncomfortable under his gaze. He understood why his dad did it so often. Isuku wordlessly took the box from Katsuki's hand, turning around, and placed it on his desk. He carefully opened it and found a mix of all Isuku's favorite things arranged neatly inside. Chrysanthemums and geraniums decorated the bottom, forming a flower nest. Uncle Masaru practiced flower arranging, and Katsuki had picked up a few tricks here and there. On top of it were clear pouches tied with thin yellow ribbon, full of cookies and chocolate, both of which Itsuku knew Katsuki had handmade. Itsuku looked up at his friend, still standing by his desk, waiting patiently, worry hidden behind his scowl. Giving the gift was a wordless apology. Itsuku accepting the gift was acknowledgement of the apology. Now he was waiting to see if Itsuku had forgiven him. Itsuku sniffed, unwrapping one of the pouches of cookies, and took a bite. Apology accepted. Tension eased off his shoulders as Katsuki let out a sigh and proceeded to to anyone apart from Isuku. Once Katsuki sat down at his desk, Isuku glanced around the room and noticed the look of astonishment on everyone's face, eyes wide and mouth hanging. Even the ever uncaring Todoroki looked surprised. But before anyone could say anything, the door slid open and Shoto walked in. His eyes fell on the open gift on his desk. Then he saw Katsuki frowning at his desk, and then at his kid looking smug while he nibbled on his cookie. Huffing amusedly, he sat down at his seat and waited for the class to start. Alrighty. That is the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry for any stuttering or mispronunciation of words. I'm also sorry if this is kind of quiet audio. I got a new mic and I don't know how to work it yet. Anyways, bye bye!